All right. During the break, I took a plane down to Florida, went bathing off the coast of, I don't know, the coast. What I don't even know what coast I was on. So there. That proves I didn't go. All right. But we are back. We were covering elements of this. Let's say if this is element number 2, we were covering the subset of these, and we came to that. The part of the subset is the payment has to be made to a qualifying foreign public official, political party, or candidate. Notice that the person doesn't even have to be in office yet, but potentially, so we can't influence potential foreign officers if they are an official candidate. So that, again, this law is broad. As the sun is large and bright, that's what this law is. It can cover a lot of ground. Now, the payment, let's call this element number 3. The payment is with the corrupt intent to obtain or retain business or direct business to another person. So let's talk about what this means. It means that we are making a payment to a foreign official in order to gain favor to obtain or retain business with a foreign government, or even if the foreign government official is going to make sure that we get a particular job. In foreign countries, foreign public officials have influence over a wide variety of types of people and companies, and so our payment to that official may be able to get us the business or keep business that we want. But building a bridge, for example, maybe it's a private company that's going to contract with a U.S. builder to build a public bridge in that country. So by us giving a bribe to a particular foreign official, we get the first rights to get the contract. We get some favor to get that contract. And this is one other way, and this is my language, but it's a way to unfair competition is the way I like to say this. If the bribe is made in any way that creates unfair competition for business in another country, then that's really the heart of the Fcpa. That's really gets to the core of what this law is about. Notice, by the way, that directing business to another person means that you can make a bribery payment and you can't make the defense, well, it didn't help me. You can't say that I didn't get benefit. If you're making a payment and that payment is going to help somebody get a benefit, then you're as guilty. So it's sort of like, again, the agency idea. Don't think you can hide behind the fact that you were just an agent for somebody else. The law makes it clear that we're not going to let that defense keep you from being prosecuted. So, and I think it makes sense. Like, you're going to tell somebody else to shoot somebody, and so I'm not guilty of murder because I just told somebody to do it, or you shot somebody, God forbid, but you shot somebody, and you said you're doing it for someone else, so you're not guilty of murder. I mean, it just makes sense that all parties involved should be able to be prosecuted under the law. Okay. Now, covering the idea of what is a foreign official, so there's that foreign sign, FX, foreign official, again, showing how far-reaching this law is one more time, is it even applies to what we call instrumentalities of a foreign government, banks, airlines, utility companies. What means instrumentalities? It means that maybe they are highly regulated by the foreign government. Maybe the foreign government has an ownership position in them. It's like our public utility companies are sort of an instrumentality of our governments because they have to do and abide by rules and regulations of our governments, which makes our government, when it comes to utility companies in particular, makes our government almost like the, quote, dictator of public utility companies. We set, in Maryland anyway, I know I won't speak for other states, but in Maryland, I think it applies the same. In Maryland, the state of Maryland controls utility companies, telling them how much they can charge and how they have to do their business. So even though a utility company might be privately held, it's almost fully regulated by the government. And in other countries, it's even worse than it is here, where they don't even have any, maybe they don't even have any private owners. So the point is that the law can bleed over to even what appears to be non-government officials, but if they are basically quasi-government organizations, then they will then bribe payments to any of their officials or to the company itself falls under the statute. One good example of this would be airlines in countries like, Emirates Airlines, owned by UAE, and so it's a instrumentality of the government. So making a bribe to the airline there would fall under the Fcpa. Okay, so this law's got a lot of teeth to it, and now you know. And now we'll actually add to the elements one other piece, which promised we would cover, so you can figure it out. We started this off by whetting your appetite for the fact that the law applies to non-U.S. companies. And I said that's most unusual. And even along the way, we said that the law is a one-sided, a one-way street. It's only for the bribe payer because the bribe receiver is a foreign government official. And so since it's foreign government official, we have no jurisdiction over them, so it can only be a one-way law. So that begs the question of how is it that we can prosecute non-U.S. companies? And now I'm going to fill in the blank for you. And it's because simply they are an issuer. They list their stock on the New York Stock Exchange or the other publicly held exchanges in the United States, and they get the definition of issuer. And so now they're under the jurisdiction of this law, even though they may not be a U.S. company. Certainly foreign companies can come into our markets, have their stock listed, and they can become an issuer. And if you remember, number one element was it applies to, there you go, an issuer. So that's how it comes to be that we can apply this law to non-U.S. companies because they may be an issuer. Now, if they don't list here, then they're beyond the scope. But that's how we get to these non-U.S. companies. All right. Defenses to the law. This will help us understand how the law gets interpreted. What are adequate defenses to the law? Well, if it was a reasonable and a real expenditure for demonstrating goods and services in a foreign country, that's a defense, meaning you were paying a foreign government official for the rights to display your goods or to promote your goods. Maybe you're paying for them to, I wouldn't say advertise. Okay, you could say advertise. You were paying the foreign government to advertise your goods, to say, would the foreign government please promote these goods? And the foreign government might be in the business of, quote, advertising goods and services in their country. So if that's what you were doing, that's not giving you an unfair advantage. It's merely advertising. So it's not an unfair business advantage if it's really in the nature of advertising. That's one defense, and the law allows for that. The second defense, which the law allows for, and this is really unique, is for what we call, it's going to be written out of the execution or performance of a contract with the foreign government or agency. The key word here is execution, and we're going to define that as a grease payment, not a bribe, but a grease payment, which basically means you grease the palms of somebody who helps get it done. Not unfairly, but gets something done, paperwork done. Typically, it's referring to documentation or applications. You can get awarded a contract, but you need to have a license in the country. So you apply for the license, and you sit around and you wait for the application to go through, and you're waiting, and it's just, it ain't happening. So you pursue asking why. Let me give you an example. Okay, I wasn't thinking I would do it, but give you an example. This happens in countries all around the world. it happens in the United States, maybe. I don't know if it happens widely. I'm not sure. I've never even heard of it with a government official, but it could happen with government services as well. And it works like this. Let me tell you my particular example. I'm often in the country of Israel, and I wanted to get a license for a particular type of business there. So I made the application and did it right, filled it out correctly, didn't lie for a change. I'm kidding. I didn't lie, but that didn't mean for a change. I mean, I didn't lie because I don't do that. So I made the application, and I'm waiting, and every once in a while I start calling. Okay, how's my application coming along? They go, what application? And I tell them, and they say, oh, we found it. Yeah, it's here. It's here. Don't worry. But it ain't getting done. So one day I decided to go down to the office where I submitted it and say, okay, can you help get this through? It's been 2 or 3 months already. And the official looks at me and say, what application? So we go through all that again. Then they find the application, say, oh yeah, we're going to get it through. And then I go back to waiting. So finally I ask somebody who lives in the country that I know, and I say, do you know how I get this moved along? And they said, yeah, you give them money. And that basically you give them a grease payment. You grease their palms so they take the paperwork off their desk and they move it to the next step. And so that's what I did. That's an accepted cultural habit of the country, and it's very acceptable in many countries of the world. So it's nothing unusual. It's not illegal. It's just a cultural way of doing business. Again, we don't have that. We do have that here in the United States too. I remember looking for an apartment one time in New York City when I was working there with Ernst, and I saw a bunch of vacant apartments in just the perfect building, perfect location. It was great. Went to the leasing agent, said, I'd like to have this apartment. I see it's vacant. Oh, no, that's taken. Ah, darn. The next week I come by, it's vacant still. Nobody's in there. And I say, did the person not take it? No, it's taken. So every week I come by, and this went on for 6, 7, 8 weeks, and it's the same unit available. And there's other units available that are empty. So it's obviously not a building, at least to my eye, it wasn't a building that was in high demand. It looked like it had in fact, there was a sign, it had vacancies. So I said to the guy, do you have any vacancies somewhere else in the building? No, we're all full. I said, well, what about that sign? We're all full. So finally, again, in my naive way, I decided to drop the naivete a little bit and ask somebody, and sure enough, you have to grease the payment of the leasing agent. You have to give them, in those days, you have to give them $500, and all of a sudden, there's a vacancy for you. So these types of payments, which are not unfair advantages, just moving paperwork along, they're allowed, and you can do that, and that's a defense. You have to document it. You have to make sure you can prove that's what it was, of course. But if you can, it's a defense to the violation of the Fcpa. Another defense is if the bribe payment, and this does happen, I don't know actually any examples of it, but if the bribe payment is legal under the laws of the country, then it's not a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. But apparently I have been told that some countries do have bribery laws allowed, or bribery is allowed in the country, not by our cultural manner, but it's actually a written law regulation being allowed. Okay, what a way to do business. Okay, all right. So now here's something really cool. It's called the Books and Records provision. It's actually part of the Fcpa, of course. That's what we're talking about. And the Books and Records provision works like this. Think back to the first slide. Remember I said this all came about from the Nixon administration, where certain public corporations were found to have, we'll play a little Wheel of Fortune here for a minute. This shouldn't be hard to figure out. Certain public corporations had slush funds, money not on their books, not recorded, and they use this not recorded money off the books in order to make these bribery payments. So this law comes about in direct opposition to those kinds of practices. So they're basically saying, we don't want slush funds to be used to make these payments. If you do that, you are in violation of the second part of the law, which can contribute to the amount of penalties that you might be inflicted with. And that's what's called the books and records provision, which basically says that you must keep good records of the money that you have and where that goes. So you must keep good records of the bribe payments. You must put it on in your books, put it on your financial statements. This expense, this $100,000 was a bribe to somebody in Brazil. Record it that way. That's basically what the law is asking you to do, which is, and you don't even have to be an accountant to know how, I won't say stupid that is, but you don't have to be an accountant to know how I'm not doing that. That's basically telling you I committed a crime. But that's what the law wants you to do. They want you to tell us you did it. So it's a rather unusual rule as part of this law, but that is what it is. It's a books and records provision. We will revisit this momentarily. We will. Okay. So now let's talk about penalties. The penalties are not that great under the strict statute of the rule, but there is what's called the Alternative Fines Act. And the Alternative Fines Act allows the government to assess 2 times the benefit that you would have gotten or did get from the bribe. 2 times the benefit. So if you are going to get awarded a $200 million contract, it means that, and now you get to see, and that benefit, you could be looking at a $400 million penalty. That's how these fines get to be huge very quickly, because it's not $25 million per conviction or per charge. Which is what the statute says is up to $25 million, but now it's 2 times the benefit, the unfair advantage benefit that you might have gotten. All right, red flags of this fraud would be, it's pretty simple, and that is, take XYZ company, and you're watching them, and they keep winning contracts in a certain country. That's a red flag. Every time the country has a contract up for a major project, this company gets it every time. So that's a flag. How is that possible that the same company gets it all the time? Well, there could be legitimate reasons for it, but it's certainly a flag. How is it that they're getting the award every time, particularly if there's competition from lots of other U.S. public companies or other companies around the world? All right, this is sort of an aside, but if you're doing any merger or acquisition, you would want to make sure that the company doesn't have any possible Fcpa issues and red flags you would look for in their books and records. Because if you merge with another company, you inherit all of their problems, even if they haven't surfaced yet. So you inherit their problems if they've not been charged with a violation, but they may be charged with a violation. Well, it might happen, then it's going to be your problem because you merged with them. So our part of the due diligence is to make sure that they've kept clean of any Fcpa issues. All right, you can also request an opinion from the Department of Justice as to a particular proposed conduct to see if it would violate the Fcpa. That's a safe harbor, a way of getting involved in making a payment to a public official. Tell the DOJ what you plan to do, find out if they think it's a violation of the law. If they say no, then you're good, you can do it. The problem is if they say no, then you can't do it. If they say no and you do it, now you're in really big trouble. So that's why it's not usual to ask for an opinion unless you're pretty sure the answer is going to be yes. So the general idea is in all these government enforcement agencies where they might, like the IRS as well does this, where they might say for certain transactions we will issue an advance ruling. That's what we call these sometimes, an advance ruling on how we will adjudicate your proposed transaction. So you ask for an advance ruling. If it goes against you, you can't do it. You're barred from doing it. You do it and you're in big trouble. So if you're sure that the answer will be yes, then you'll do it just to avoid an audit later on. by getting an advanced ruling, you avoid getting prosecuted later on if the government changes their mind. You avoid an audit if it's a tax issue. So that's why it's sometimes done, but I would think it's rarely asked for in advance. Okay, we are going to pause here and we'll come back to this yellow slide.